evening, fellow physical therapists, aspiring physical therapists, and peers. Thank you for returning to our weekly vlog of A Life of a Physical Therapist. In this segment, we're going to be discussing a problem that has recently been dominating our field, physical therapy burnout. In this segment, not only are we going to discuss the problem as well as analyze it, but we're going to include helpful remedies in order to combat this radical situation. I'm going to begin this segment by talking to you all a little about my day. I wake up to my blaring alarm, screaming at Alexa multiple times until she finally understood what I was trying to say, which is what everyone tries to tell her. Shut the hell up. I began my morning routine, brushed my hair, took a shower, got dressed, did my hair, tried finishing the charts that I didn't complete from the night before, ate breakfast, checked the unpaid balance of student bills, my morning routine. By this point, I had yet to make one civilized interaction with anyone. I was just, enjoying my me time while ignoring the backdrop of stress that constantly encompasses my brain at all hours of the day. Anyways, let's fast forward to when I'm finally getting into work. I pull up into the parking lot to my usual spot and I find out it's taken. My spot's taken. My freaking spot was taken. With my luck, I ended up finding another spot. And by that same luck, it ended up being in the very, 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 very back of the parking lot. I finally get into the office and I'm dripping with sweat. Dripping, soaked, totally soaked in sweat, and I bet I look like an absolute lunatic. I check myself in and pick up the chart of for my first patient of the day. I quickly scan the chart and, by my luck, the same luck, it was going to be another difficult day. The patient I was seeing today had an advanced disability that not even I had seen before myself. And I've already been working in this field for 5 years. I go into the gym while trying to gain my composure, and there's the mother of my patient with her patient already in my gym. You can imagine my surprise when I finally look at the time and realize it's 9:30 and not 9, and my clock was wrong this entire time and I'm unreasonably late, and my patient and her mother are already there in my room. I quickly take a scan of what's going on. My patient is screaming. Her mother's totally ignoring her. It's like she doesn't even have a child in the room. The daughter's basically begging for her attention, all while the mother's on her phone. So I clear my throat multiple times, and by the third time, she finally recognizes that I'm in the room. As we make eye contact, thoughts bombard my head. What therapy plan should I categorize her with? How advanced is this child's condition? Should I test her limitations before seeing what the extent of what she's actually capable of doing? Am I good enough to be doing this? Is the mother's competence going to be getting in the way of the rehabilitation plan that I have for her child? This child is enclosed 2 sizes too small, and the mother doesn't even seem to notice, just like she didn't seem to notice the freaking patient screaming for 5 minutes while I was trying to clear my throat, but she didn't even recognize that I was in the room. This all happened in like the 30 seconds while I was remaining silent looking at her mother. I explained to the mother the process of rehabilitation I planned to put her child through, and when I was done explaining, I totally gaslight her questions. The mother looks pissed, and I bet I look still crazy. I exit the room and I totally have my 12th mental breakdown of the day. Well, I hope your day went a little bit better than mine. The reason I wanted to tell you all about my stressful day is because I bet a lot of you guys are feeling the exact same way I'm feeling. Advanced disabilities are coming in at a non-stop rate, and it's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming. So to better understand why we're going through this video is going to dissect the fight or flight theory. This problematic scenario that is my life represents the fight or flight theory, commonly known as the stress response within the field of physical therapy. This theory was created in the 1930s by Walter Bradford Cannad in order to explain the reactions of stress, and how organisms react when being placed in front of a difficult situation. This stress response begins within the brain. Harvard Health Publishing states, when someone experiences a stressful situation, the oblongata, an area of the brain that contributes to the emotional processing, sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. This area of the brain functions like a command center, communicating with the rest of the body through the nervous system so that the person has the energy to either fight or to flee. The field of physical therapy is different factions of high-stress occupations within the same branch, such as pediatric physical therapy, geriatric physical therapy, sports medicine physical therapy, neurology physical therapy, etc., etc. To an outside viewer, the field of physical therapy seems like a laid-back version of being a physician. An article had even included physical therapists as a part of high-paying, low-stress jobs. An article included physical therapy, high-paying, low-stress. What many don't know is that there's a high demand for physical therapists in the workforce. The competitiveness that we've had to experience within the field is outrageous to even be considered low stress at all. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment of physical therapists is expected to grow by 36% from 2014 to 2024, much faster than the rate of all other occupations. The article Physical Therapy School Put Me in Depth states, this degree requires you to obtain 3 extra years of schooling at a school of physical therapy, which will cost an individual $75,000 in tuition alone. Private school education can creep upwards between $100,000 to $150,000. Within the entire field of physical therapy, there is a sizable amount of material to be stressed about. The growing geriatrics population due to baby boomers is causing the need for physical therapists to rise in a hastily manner based on the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This faction of geriatrics quickly has become one of the largest in all the other branches of physical therapy. Now there's a whole new demand for qualified personnel with a whole new infrastructure of styles to adapt to within the field of physical therapy. In an article about understanding older patients, these styles include compensating for hearing deficits, as well as compensating for visual deficits. Plus, with starting salaries being significantly lower in other medical career pathways, the average DPT grad will take 45 years to pay off $100,000 in student debt. Assuming that therapists make an average salary of $70,000, have a 5% interest rate and puts 8% of his or her own salary towards his loan repayments. When you think about the fight-or-flight theory, the root behind the cause of stress, we compare it hand in hand with the field of physical therapy because it is a high-stress occupation. But you may ask, how does the fight-or-flight theory affect the emotional processes that physical therapists encounter when being presented with an unorthodox patient? Preliminarily, I contend that physical therapists are experiencing the drawbacks, negative factors of the fight-or-flight theory when dealing with patients that are uncommon for them, patients that are difficult to assess, and patients that have different viewpoints. Thinking back to the day I had, if we dissect the characteristics of what actually happened, which pairs hand in hand with the flight or flight theory, I am part of the many of physical therapists experiencing a problem that I recently discussed was dominating the field: physical therapy burnout. Physical therapist Meredith Victor Caston wrote a scholarly article titled 9 Signs You Are a Burned Out PT. Within the article, she discusses all the high stress factors that have been placed upon her life due to this occupation, such as the one that you noted in my scenario. Then later, when discussing the actual occupation, this article stated the crisis at hand, as well as included helpful remedies in order to combat this situation that we will include later in this segment. Physical therapist burnout gives us a near-perfect scenario of the fight-or-flight response in action. When dissecting the theory, there has to be a difficult decision weighing upon your life. You need to have an answer to the many questions that are pondered within your brain. In the instance of burnout, physical therapists are constantly faced with crippling debt, long hours, and multitude of patients with difficult and advanced disabilities to diagnose. Due to the pollen of stress within the fight or flight theory caused by the burnout crisis, patients are getting the short end of the straw. Patients experience therapists' questionable attitudes, incompetence, as well as discrimination. In addition, with unorthodox patients coming in every day, such as the new faction of geriatrics that are being introduced, there leaves room for error due to the stress already tormenting physical therapist brains on a daily basis. Thinking back to the hysterical anecdote of my life, by using the fight or flight theory, we can also conclude that I was experiencing another aspect of the job: vulnerabilities and discrimination within the field of physical therapy. The process that took place at the end of my story because of me was gaslighting. As stated in the article, Prejudice and Discrimination, gaslighting is when a patient who is blind to the effects of prejudice or who does not recognize their own prejudice may inadvertently gaslight by questioning a client's experience or reality. For instance, the patient I was seeing had an advanced disability. Without intending to, I might have merely ignored the mother's questions towards the end of when I was explaining what needed to be done with her daughter because of her incompetence, and without really intending to, I blew off her questions, and I degraded the capabilities of the patient and the family by questioning her presence in general and the circumstances of their visit. Due to this subconsciousness, it affected my work habits. Was it wrong? Yes. Will I do it again subconsciously? Probably. And there are multitude types of discrimination within the workplace. The editor of Good Therapy states that there are altering perceptions, minimizing experiences, and not recognizing power dynamics. Altering perceptions is when a therapist's biased beliefs about a group alter the treatment being given. The article Prejudice and Discrimination states, a male therapist who believes women tend to over-exaggerate things may not believe a woman's accusations of sexual abuse. Minimizing experiences is when a therapist's miscalculated beliefs about how prejudice and discrimination affects how people can reduce their ability to help. An example used within Prejudice and Discrimination states, a therapist might underestimate the extent to which police killings of black people who are unarmed affect the mental health of a black person, or may be oblivious to how high-profile sexual assault cases affect sexual assault abuser survivors. Finally, not recognizing power dynamics is when a therapist who harbors prejudicial beliefs or who is needless of the effects of prejudice might not recognize power dynamics in therapy. Another example within the article of Prejudice and Discrimination states, a white therapist might not understand why a black person is reluctant to discuss racism. In family therapy, a therapist who is biased might not notice power dynamics between male and female romantic partners. These vulnerabilities can pair hand in hand with the fight or flight theory because it describes a problematic scenario, which are the vulnerabilities and the process of how physical therapists encounter the stress response. By finding out the root of the cause of physical therapy burnout, as well as the other vulnerabilities, the deconstruction of the fight or flight theory, physical therapists will be able to combat their emotional battle before encountering uncommon patients with disabilities, or patients that they don't normally see. Recognizing this theory will allow them to recognize their weaknesses as well as my weaknesses within the workplace to create a better physical therapy environment, which is what we all want to do. Finally, thanks to physical therapist Meredith Victor Caston, here is a website that includes our helpful remedies for combating physical therapy burnout: www.webpt.com/blog/post/9 signs you are a burned out PT and what to do about it. Thank you for joining us on today's segment of A Life of a PT. I hope to see y'all join in next week again. Thank you.